Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 35 of Perfect Inspiration. My name is Brian Matias. Today's episode comes from a recent trip that I took to Cambodia. And it's funny because if you read the text above, you'll know that I'm not much of a planner. I don't really spend a lot of time other than thinking about, the destination, where I want to go or what I want to shoot. I don't do too much in terms of research, mostly because I don't want to bias myself. A lot of times when you do research, you see what other people, other photos taken by other photographers. And I don't like that too much because, like I said, it kind of biases me. However, there is something to be said about planning. And I owe a lot of the shots I got to the people I traveled with because of their planning. For instance, this image here, this was taken, we landed, when we first got to Cambodia, we landed in a city of Phnom Penh and spent about 4 days there. And then our plan was to drive to another city called Battambang. Now, the distance or the time that it takes to travel from those two cities is about 3.5 to 4 hours. Mostly because, not because of geography, but because the road conditions are so poor. There are these dirt roads with tons of potholes. And also, there is no sensible traffic law or traffic system. People just drive where they want. So you have to be very careful. However, instead of having an agenda where we had to get to Battambang at a certain time, we decided to not have any agenda, which allowed us to take our time driving. And so we were on the road, and here is the road that we were on. Unfortunately, there is no street view in Cambodia, so we'll have to do it with an aerial view. And so we were on National Highway 5, which is right here, and we were driving. We were in a passenger van with 6 or 7 of us, 5 of us, and then our tour guide and the driver. And we saw you can see here from the aerial view, these are rice paddy fields. And we were really fortunate because the rice was getting ready to harvest, and you could see that the colors were really pretty. And so it made for amazing photography. Now, this was the first time we had really driven outside of Phnom Penh, so we didn't see the countryside yet. And had we had a reason to get to Battambang for whatever reason, we probably would have driven past this. Instead, we saw this herd of water buffalo grazing, and they were just so beautiful. And when I took the shot, I was maybe 20, 30 feet away from the water buffalo. It was not far at all from me. So it was really amazing to just kind of get this close to the animals. And so I spent a fair amount of time. That was the other thing. Not only by not having a plan, or rather by planning that, making a plan that we didn't have to be somewhere at a certain time, we were able to spend more time here. So we spent about a half hour here just photographing not only the water buffalo, but we photographed people who were on their motorbikes driving down the national highway. There was a woman with her baby just kind of sitting under a tree, waiting for a bus, I think. And so we photographed a lot, and it was all because we weren't rushed. We planned accordingly. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to send it over to Perfect Effects so we can stylize. I'm going to do that by going, just right-clicking on my image, going to Edit In, and selecting Perfect Effects 4 to start. Alright, so in Perfect Effects 4, I'm going to go ahead and apply certain effects to get a particular look here, and I just want to accentuate the colors. There's definitely, as I shot in Cambodia, there is a certain style, I guess, or a color palette that I definitely gravitate to when I process these images. So I'm going to start by going to the landscape category here, and I'm going to apply an effect called Magic Forest. And I'm actually going to keep this at 100%. You can see here, watch, if I bring this to 0 and then bring it up, it all the way at 100% is what I like. I really love the effect here, the contrast boost and the color boost. So now I'm going to click Add to create a new effect layer, and we're going to stack on this. I'm going to close the landscape category. I'm going to open up Movie Looks, and I'm going to apply an effect here called Return of the King. And the reason why I want to apply Return of the King is because of that soft look it gives the image. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up the blending options here, bring this over, and I'm going to change it to the blending mode to soft light. And I'm going to click Apply. And so I still retain that softness, but I get more of a saturation again and contrast boost. I'm going to bring the strength down to 0. And here I'm not going to use as much. I'll probably use about 40%. And I really like what it does here. And you can see, let's just kind of, after 2 effects, here's the original. And I'm down here at the preview checkbox. And then afterwards, we're really getting a nice look here. I'm going to click Add. And what I'm going to do is build my own tone enhancer. So if you're Imperfect Effects, under the Effect options, there's going to be a drop down. I'm going to go over to Tone Enhancer. And there are a few things I'm going to do. First, I'm going to bring the black level to 0. Now you can see that we've got all of these sliders here. Now to point out, the tone enhancer, I'm really only paying attention to the water buffalo in the foreground. Everything else is irrelevant, so don't worry if it looks funky. We're not going to keep it there. So the first thing I'll do is take the brightness. I'm going to bring the brightness up to not much, about 7, 9%. Again, I'm only looking at the buffalo. Next thing I'm going to do is take my shadows. I want to bring out the shadows. And to bring out shadows, you're going to use the shadow slider. So I'm going to bring that up to about 20%. And you can see how we're getting more detail in the buffalo. And then finally, the local contrast, which is the actual kind of texture effect, we're going to bring that up a bit too. Maybe about 30%. That looks good. All right. Now, with that done, I'm going to take the overall strength, which controls the overall strength of all of these sliders, right here, the amount slider, bring it to 0, and I'm going to bring it up probably not to maybe 70-ish%. Now, you remember how I said we're only really focusing on the buffalo? Well, if I take the masking brush from the tool well and I click on invert, that's going to hide the effect, and it's going to allow me to paint in. It automatically takes my masking brush and put it into paint in mode. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my feather here and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to take my brush size and make it a little bit larger. And I'm going to start drawing in. Now while I'm drawing in, actually I'm going to turn the mask view on. And I'm going to start just kind of getting the inside of the water buffalo. Now that I've got most of that done, I want to get the edges. And for that, I'm going to turn the Perfect brush on, which is kind of an edge detecting brush. And what it's going to do is it's going to help prevent spillover from painting onto the grass. And the way it's doing that is it's analyzing colors. So you see this little plus sign in the middle here? Whatever color that plus sign samples is basically what's going to keep the edge detection. So because it's sampling the color of the buffalo, which is pretty much different than the color of the grass, or the rice paddy rather, we should be okay with edge detection. So I'm going to go here and just kind of get the horn. We're doing good there. Really nice edge detection over there. So a little spot, I'm going to remove there, and I'm just going to kind of remove the edge of the buffalo. Now, when I was editing this image originally, I was kind of concerned at that fringe right there. But watch, let's turn the mask off here for a second. If you turn the preview off, that fringe is originally there, straight out of camera, so it's not something I really cared too much about. If I see a fringe like this occur because of stylization, that's where I'm going to go ahead and try to fix it. But in this case, again, it's there originally, so I'm not concerned. All right, so let's change this back to paint in and just kind of get the rest of the water buffalo. We'll get his... can't forget his tail. So we'll get that. That's looking really nice. Again, really good edge detection, courtesy of the Perfect brush. And let's get his little nose. All right, so we're good here. Let's turn the mask off again and continue onward. I'm going to click Add. We're almost done here. The next thing I want to do is kind of finish things off with a texture. Those of you that know me know that I've got actually one go-to texture under the texture paper category, but I'm going to use a different one. Normally I use rice paper light. I absolutely love it. But in this case, I'm going to take the rice paper vignette. Now the first thing I'm going to do is scale it out because I don't like that dark border. So I'm going to use the scale slider and I'm going to bring it out to about maybe 39%. I really want it to stretch out. And I'm going to take the overall strength of that texture, bring it to 0, and I only want about half of it. I don't need the full amount. Click Add, And then typically, if it's not a texture, the last effect I'll apply is some sort of a vignette. So I'm going to go to the darken vignette category, and I'm going to apply the first one called Big Softy. And what I'm going to do here is the brightness here, it's a bit too dark, so I'm going to bring the brightness up a bit. Maybe about 40-ish%. That looks good. And then the midpoint, I'm going to bring that up a bit too. It's a bit too close to the center for my taste. And then the feathers looking good, and the roundness, I'm going to make it more round. Okay, so watch. Let's take a look here. Let's turn off the preview. This is our original image. And then this is our edited image. You can see it just kind of brings out the colors of the scene. And it really brings out nice texture from the water buffalo in the foreground. So let's go ahead here and click apply so that we can return back to Lightroom and finish things off. All right, so here we are in the develop module of Lightroom, and let's go ahead and just start adjusting the tone of the image. I'm gonna actually bring the brightness up just a tiny bit, and then I'm gonna start with the highlights, shadows, white, and black point. First thing I'm gonna do is press and hold on the Option key on the Mac or Alt key on a PC. Remember, press and hold. And I'm going to drag here, and you can see when I click on the white slider, that blue over there on the top, that's showing blown out highlights. So if I drag to the left, you can see how we're going to restore the highlight information. We basically want to drag to the left until there's little to no dots. And so that brought out all the detail back in the sky. And so let's do the same thing with the black point. There's some lost detail in the buffalo, but probably won't be able to get rid of or return much of it. You can see it's pretty deep shadow over there. And that's okay. Shadows are a good thing. Highlights, same thing. Let's bring the highlights down a bit just to get rid of the remaining blown out highlights. Shadows, bring it out a bit. That's looking okay, getting some more detail, especially in the water buffalo's face. See, here's the original without the Lightroom adjustments. And basically to do this, I'm hitting the backslash key, which is above the return key. So clicking that, watch up here, you see it says before. That's basically showing you the image without any adjustments. And so we're getting a lot of nice detail back in the buffalo sitting in the foreground. All right, now what we want to do is I want to draw the eye down to the lower third of the frame. And to do that, I'm going to take my graduated filter here. I'm going to drop down and I'm going to click on exposure. And I'm going to bring the exposure down a bit. With that done, I'm just going to drag down. And you can see how it kind of darkens the top part of the image. And now I'm going to basically reverse that. I'm going to click New. I'm going to bring the exposure up a bit, and I'm going to drag from the bottom up. And now that kind of brings out the bottom part of the image. If you want to hide the guides over here, just press the H key, and that hides it so you can see the image. All right, last things I'm going to do, I'm going to add a nice contrast boost and a clarity boost. And I'm also going to drop the saturation a bit, but I'm going to boost the vibrance. And that kind of gives me a really nice color without it being too punchy. And last thing, even though I added a little bit of a vignette in Perfect Effects, I'm going to apply a little bit more here. Under the Effects panel, there's a nice little post-crop vignette that I can apply. And then there we have it. That's kind of, I call this done. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'm going to go to the adjustment brush really quickly. Exposure's up. I'm going to bring clarity up as well. And I want to bring out some detail in these horns here. They just look so awesome. So you can see with the brush, I'm able to brighten those up a bit. I'm going to do the same thing to the actual face of the water buffalo. Let me bring out some more of the exposure. There, that's looking really cool. And so again, let's close the adjustment brush. Hit the backslash key. You can see just kind of nice finishing touches. I always like to finish things off in Lightroom. And there we have it. So again, you know, I don't know how many of you are extensive travelers. This Cambodia trip I recently took was by far the most extensive one. It definitely got my travel bug going. So I look forward to more of these adventures. And, you know, I definitely took something away from it in terms of it's very easy to get caught up in having to get here, get there. But by planning accordingly and giving yourself time just to enjoy the journey and not necessarily the destinations, you find out that there's actually tons of stuff to shoot. So I hope this has helped you out for your journeys in the coming weeks and months. And I thank you very much. See you next week.